Hi, this is John with Good Burger Reviews, and today I'm doing another special presentation. We are going to review and rank one of my most favorite all-time series because it is celebrating its 50th anniversary this very month. And that movie is from 1975, Jaws. So it shouldn't be much of a surprise. At Jaws, I just highlighted Jaws in one of my most other recent segments of most influential horror movies, and Jaws was listed in the first batch. Very influential movie and franchise. And also, as far as my ranking of Jaws is concerned, it has definitely flip-flopped over the years. Growing up with this franchise, the original Jaws wasn't always my favorite. And in fact, when I was young, Jaws 2, Jaws 4, at one point even, made the top of my list. Now, as time passed, the order that we're going to get into today is the order it'll probably stay in for the rest of my life. Unless they come out with another one. But I do want to address that. I don't foresee them making another Jaws anytime soon. However, I could be surprised. I never want to say never, but I'll say most likely not gonna happen. And I'm okay with that. And in this video, I'm gonna start with the best one and work my way to the worst. I feel like this franchise is old enough and there might not be too many surprises with how it plays out. So with no further ado, let's get into my Jaws reviews and ranking. Coming in at the top of the list for the best of the Jaws franchise is the original Jaws 1975. This movie is starring Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw. It also has Murray Hamilton, Lorraine Gary. The basic plotline, which we all know: small New England town, which is an island, gets attacked by a shark during the height of its beach season in the summer. The first one actually occurs on 4th of July, or is centered around 4th of July. So I'm not going to do the negatives, the positives, the mixed on this one because there's hardly any negatives or any mixed really. This is all positive as far as Jaws is concerned. Now, I did mention that with Jaws, when I was young, it wasn't my favorite. In fact, sometimes it was boring to me when I was a kid, the first one, because it seemed like all the action was in the way front and then a little bit at the way end, and that middle part was like long and boring. But it seemed like as I got older and when I turned 40 especially, Jaws went straight to the top of my list as my favorite in the series and my favorite movie of all time. And the reason why is the characters in Jaws are amazing. You have three main characters. You have Martin Brody, you have Matt Hooper, and you have Quint. And these guys, when they finally leave Amity Island and they go out on the Orca, on the boat, looking for the shark, the dynamic and the characters that they are amazing. And at one point in time, I felt like I could relate very closely to each one of them, especially Martin. Everyone wants to be Quint, but Martin, Chief Brody, is the protagonist. He's the star.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so nevermore never shall we see you again.
I mainly think of one scene that the shark's not really even in, and that's when Quint gives his Indianapolis speech, but not just the speech, but the whole time when they're on the boat overnight and they're in the underneath part and they're sitting there and they're having a couple drinks and they're chit-chatting and they're singing songs and they're telling old stories. You know, I wanted to be there. I wanted to sit in that room and chill with those guys, listen to their stories. You know, they created such a great dynamic. And the other part about them is like each character was different. So you had Quint, he was the alpha. He was the, you know, told all the good stories and had a history, and he was from the island, and he was very quirky with just some of the things that he would say, like his whole chalkboard scene in the beginning. But then you have Matt Hooper. He's the science guy. You know, he's a little bit younger than the other two. He's kind of a little bit nerdy, but a little bit goofy. But like, he's also like in his niche. He's on point with what he's bringing to the table. He's a shark expert. He knows sharks. Different than the way Quint knows sharks, because Quint knows sharks too. One of them is like street smarts with sharks, and that's hard to say. And another one is more book smarts with the sharks. And then you have Martin, Chief Brody. He's afraid of sharks, you know, and he's the one that you really relate to at the end of the day. He's the everyday guy. He's the one that like got kind of dragged into this situation. He's the one, it was just because his job as being chief of police has to deal with taking care of this shark.
You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
So, real quickly, the shark shows up. The first girl, Chrissy, she's at like a campfire. She's partying with her friends. They're drinking and everything. And then she goes for a night swim and boom, she gets sucked under. You don't even see the shark in the scene. And this was another great thing about this movie, is like the shark is very well hidden. And it wasn't always intentional. It's because of how much trouble they had with the shark physically making this movie, but it added to the suspense and the mystery, and it's slowly becoming bigger and bigger and more part of the story to the end. And then, you know, the town becomes on alert because now we have one person missing and they're not sure what's happened, because in this scene no one's seen a shark, but they do get the body, and it's like, initially it's like shark attack, but then he puts on his little report boat accident because someone's on the phone with him saying boat accident. So everything's going as normal. They're still investigating her death, but like beaches are open and people are swimming. And that's when Alex Kittner gets it. So he's the next victim. And this was another great scene. You know, everyone's at the beach. Little kid goes out swimming on a raft, and shark comes, and everyone sees the kid die. But again, the shark itself is not seen that much, but it's pretty clear that at this point it's a shark or something. And everyone's running out of the water, panicked and everything. And then we have a little hiatus before the kills. Now there's this whole like 4th of July is coming. Are we going to close down the beaches? The beaches are going to be closed. They're not going to be closed. They're going to have a town meeting. They're going to talk about what they're going to do about the shark. They're going to have every fisherman in Earth come to this town trying to hunt down the shark, because now there's a reward for killing it.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark.
Bad fish, but I'll catch him and kill him.
And they kill a shark. It's the wrong shark.
A what?
So they go back in the water again. And just a couple highlights before we get to that tail segment, because I'm not going to go through every scene, every little thing, but like highlights in that middle segment is definitely Quint's scene in the town meeting when he interrupts everyone with a chalkboard and starts talking about, I'll take care of the shark. And then another highlight is after Mrs. Kintner finds out that there was another death in the town from a shark, or allegedly the shark, and her kid was allowed to swim even though the officials knew there were sharks, and she comes up and she slaps Martin Brody in the face. You know, that's an iconic scene from Jaws. And I just thought that was also heartfelt in a minute, because, you know, you're dealing with a parent who lost their child. Okay, and then right before they go on the journey, because they thought they've killed the shark when they caught a tiger shark, but Matt Hooper knows that there potentially there is still another shark out there, that they caught the wrong shark. And he realizes this when he goes on Ben Gardner's boat, and that famous jump scare of dead Ben Gardner underneath the boat, his face comes through the hole, and he finds the shark tooth and everything. And Mayor Vaughn is not going to listen to Chief Brody or Matt Hooper on any of this, and he decides to open the beaches for 4th of July weekend, because the town relies on the money and they need it. You know, they need that income to support their town for the whole year. And lo and behold, the shark shows up, but they have a fake. There was a little gag with 2 kids first, so everyone's kind of out of the water. And another famous part where the shark's in the pond and the girl's running and saying, the shark's in the pond. And Chief Brody realizes that his son is in the pond because they told him to swim in the pond because he didn't want him in the main part of the water. And shark gets, I guess it's an uncle, I don't know, I forget the connection, but he's with an adult male in this like canoe, and the boat tips over and the shark's there, almost gets Michael, but gets the uncle. We'll just say the uncle. And that's it. Now it's apparent there's a shark still, and now it's going to be Quint, Hooper, and Brody on the Orca hunting down the shark for the whole final segment of this movie. And I'll tell you what, I love this segment now. I was bored of it when I was young, but now I just love it. The action, the sharks on their tail, the whole thing with the barrels, the whole dynamic between Brody, Hooper, Quint, and then just the whole way, the tension of it, because like the shark coming, you don't know when the shark's gonna come, and then there's a whole shark cage scene where Hooper goes down into the shark cage, and I thought, oh my gosh, like why would you go down there with this giant shark? I mean, the shark's big in this one. I feel like the shark gets bigger in some of the sequels. Well, at least Jaws 3, it's definitely bigger, and maybe 2, but then you think Hooper's gone because eventually the shark gets to the cage, and you feel like it's down to Quint and Brody. And before I get into how it wraps up, but of course when they first see the shark out there is that famous line when Martin Brody's throwing the chum into the water and the shark jumps up and he realizes, wow, we've got a big shark on our hand, and he backs up, and Quint's in the office, the hub of the boat, and near the radio, and he's like, we're gonna need a bigger boat. And Quint just destroys the radio. Like, he doesn't want to leave. He wants to get the shark. Quint has a personal vendetta with sharks.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons of them.
And then, of course, at the end, the shark does come for Quint. So when Hooper's down under the water and they think he's gone, the shark gets on the boat and starts sinking it, and Brody manages to find his footing and stays in the little area of the hub of the boat. But Quint slides down gets into the shark's mouth, and literally the shark chomps on him real good as the boat's starting to sink. And this was one of the most brutal scenes in Jaws, in the original Jaws for sure, but probably in almost all the Jaws, it's up there for brutality. And now we're down to Brody. The boat's practically sunk. It's him versus the shark by himself, so the tension is at full. It's at 100 here. You know, it's like you're thinking, wow, of all the people, like this was the guy that hated the sharks, was afraid of the water, barely wanted to go on this thing, and now he's the last one. And then the boat's slowly sinking. He's like on this like antenna thing with his gun, and he manages to get one of those oxygen tanks, breathing tanks, into the shark's mouth at the last second. And finally, you know, smile, you son of a bitch. He shoots the shark, and it blows up in this masterful death. And then it's over, but like Hooper comes up like he wasn't dead, he was hiding. And you know, the end. I mean, Jaws is a legacy. I mean, it's a giant blockbuster. It's definitely the reason why it's at the top of my list. I mean, it has a special place in my heart nostalgia wise. Overall, it's just a great movie directed by Steven Spielberg. I mean, there's so many great things about this movie, and you know, I'll always love it. It'll always be my number one. Probably number one of all movies of all time. Coming in at number 2 for rank in Jaws, Jaws 2. So this is like what they called over the time slasher Jaws. You have the cast of the teenagers. Michael has now grown up to be 17. He's a teenager, and all his friends are in this central focus of the movie. And this is why Jaws 2, for the longest time, when I was young, was at the top of my list, because growing up with this franchise, I related to the kids. You know, when I was really little, I liked Sean Brody. He was 8 years old. And then as I became a teenager, I related more to Michael Brody and his friends and his group of friends. So for the longest time, Jaws 2 was my favorite. It had more action. Like there was more action in between the non-action scenes, more kills, you know, and that's what I liked as a teenager, even into my 20s. But, you know, at the end of the day, even now, you know, when I watch Jaws 2 now, it's Martin Brody. His struggle, everything that he goes through in this movie. And I know this movie is kind of just like an echo or a repeat of the first movie. It's very similar with his journey, especially in the beginning where he's like, shark shows up, no one wants to believe him. And he's like, I don't want to go through this crap again. You know, that scene. And then the big difference here is like, they really don't believe him, and he messes up on this one beach scene where he calls out shark and shoots the gun, and there's no shark, and he gets fired. And I'm like, wow, you know, he says that line, you know, I'm 40 years old and I've never been fired, and it's like you just really feel his character. So I heard, you know, many stories over the years that Martin Brody, that Roy Scheider did not want to do Jaws 2, and he was, not that he phoned it in, but like his heart wasn't in it 100% as far as wanting to be there, but like his acting was still really good. And, you know, I loved him. He's one of my most favorite actors. And he's what makes Jaws 2, because you have no Quint, you have no Hooper, it's just him. You have his deputy who's kind of a helper, but he doesn't even stick with him till the end. You know, at the way end, it's him and the kids.
No.
You're all right. You're all right. All right. Helen.
Tina! It's still there. Tina, it's okay. It's still there. What's the matter? What's still there? What's still there?
So I'm not going to go through the entire story of this one. I just will say the kills are decent in this one. It definitely had that slasher vibe. I just say what really the standout for this one, other than Martin Brody, is I still enjoy the kids. Even though I'm, you know, in my 40s now and can't relate to them as much, you know, it's the nostalgia of them. You know, you have Michael, you have his best friend, you know, they're sitting there talking about the girls and they're arguing over who's going to go on the boats together. And then, of course, you have Jackie. I think she's an underrated scream queen. I mean, I hear so much about like how annoying her screams were, and like she was the girl like everyone wanted the shark to eat because of how panicked she got. And she was kind of snappy and bossy throughout the whole thing, because she's like the new girl. And like she's like, oh yeah, we're meeting at the dock at 8, everyone, let's go. Like, you just showed up, you're like just entering this friend group, you're Brooke's cousin, and you know, she was funny. I always liked her though. I mean I hated her sometimes, but I liked her, and when she was screaming I just thought it was hysterical. You know, I mean, she just seemed to make it, the panic in the final act, so much more because of how panicked she was. She was more panicked than the 8-year-old kid, Sean. You know, and then you have that one kid that was in Christine. He's in this. And, you know, and let's not forget Bob and Larry, Mayor Vaughn's son. You know, these kids I thought were a great dynamic. And I watched videos seeing that many of those kids who played in Jaws 2 stayed friends throughout the years and you know, did little things together, parties and, you know, those like conventions and stuff. So, but overall, Jaws 2 is like just a slightly less of an echo to Jaws. And, you know, even though there's a little bit more action, some of the stuff is nonsensical, like the helicopter being eaten, which of course when I was young I thought that was awesome, but I'm like, really, we're gonna have a shark eat a helicopter? Which, you know, that scene was pretty cool, but like it seemed unrealistic. And then like the whole water skier scene as well, like I always liked it when the water skier got it, but like I never was a fan of the way the boat blew up and the one girl, like she pours the gasoline on herself and she sets fire, and I'm like, yeah, the shark's there and the shark's involved. And I guess that's how the shark gets its scarring. And then you have Tina and Eddie. You know, they witnessed that, and like they're like this other little, they're kind of a little bit separate from the group. And you know, Eddie and Tina separate, and they're like once in the tail end, they're one of the first deaths of all the kids on the boats. And Eddie gets it, and Tina's left in the boat. You know, he falls out the boat after the shark bangs the boat. And then the boat's dragged along, and she's like, swim, Eddie, swim faster. So I thought that was a very well drawn out scene with great tension. Like, the shark shows up, you know, it's gonna take him a minute to get back to the boat, and he's getting closer. Obviously, the shark's swimming faster than him. So I really thought probably one of the better scenes in all of the Jawses as far as death scenes. And you know, and then after it gets him, you know, Brody and Lorraine realize that the kids are out, and they go out. They go out looking for him, and they find Tina first, and she's like, shark. You know, that's another iconic moment from Jaws 2. But then, you know, Ellen and Hendrix take the girl back, so Brody's left alone to find the kids and hunt down the shark by himself. So I feel like at some point the stakes are a little bit more higher in this one, but because it's Brody and the kids, you know, the dynamic and the characters, it's just a different thing. You know, it's not that the three guys on the Orca. However, this one, I still love it. You know, I'll always love Jaws 2 as well. You know, it's definitely, I think it's a fan favorite as well, you know, as far as the series goes. And, you know, the ending, you know, it's a shocking ending with Jaws 2 because the way the shark dies, and, you know, he basically fries it on a power line, which, you know, in some sense I thought maybe it's not 100% a realistic ending, but for what it is, for what Jaws is, for what Jaws was at that point, and how the franchise evolved, I thought it was a really great ending. Number 3 for ranking in Jaws. Jaws 3. This is another one that's switched around. So sometimes Jaws 3 would be at the bottom of my list, sometimes it would be more towards the top of my list. But, you know, as we get to the tail end of the franchise, you know, the two that are more stinkers in it, but I still love Jaws 3. I mean, nostalgia reasons, I mean, I don't hate it. And, you know, here's what's funny about Jaws 3. So, it's 3D, right? So you've got the whole 3D thing going on. So like with multiple rewatches and not watching it in 3D, sometimes the images and what you're watching is just, you know, it's crusty. But when I think about what I liked about Jaws 3 and then where it misses is like, so Jaws 3 takes place in SeaWorld, which I thought was a neat aspect. You know, it was fresh for what they were doing at the time. And if just a real quick tidbit about this, if you think about the basic plot lines of Jaws 3, it is the same basic plot lines of the original Jurassic Park. Or even more, Jurassic World, because in Jaws 3 the park's open and the shark comes. And in Jurassic Park they have this theme park and, you know, the dinosaurs come. Jurassic World, the park's open and the dinosaurs come. So I mean, and it's not just that, you know, it's a creature feature that shows up at a theme park, but like even some of the characters in it, like Bouchard, Calvin Bouchard, could he be like a John Hammond? You know, you have Fitzroyce, who kind of gives you a Muldoon.
And Dennis Quaid as Mike Brody, kind of matching Sam Jackson as Ray Arnold. And then I see a little bit of Bess Armstrong's Kay in Laura Dern, Ellie Sattler.
Jaws 3, I mean, what? Yeah, Jurassic Park is a little hint of what would come in Jurassic Park in Jaws 3. But, you know, Jaws 3 ends up being a little generic in some spots. You know, the acting of, other than Dennis Quaid and Kay, the actors are just kind of, the acting is rough in this one. And you do have Leah Thompson in here, who plays a water skier and Sean Brody's love interest. And she was a little rough around the edges in this one, but, you know, I liked her overall. So you have the basic storyline, the shark shows up to SeaWorld, and Dennis Quaid is like in charge of like the entire place of SeaWorld, like the property, like he's like the property manager and he manages the whole park. And then you have his girlfriend played by Bess Armstrong, Kay. She's like the animal girl, so like she gets in the tank with the dolphins, and she's like a dolphin trainer, and she's like into science, and she's like that little heartfelt love interest for him. And they're more a love interest. They're like a serious couple, you know. They're planning their future, and there's a little bit of a story between them. And at the beginning, Mike sends down one of his workers to fix the gate. Something's wrong with the gate, and you know, he ends up getting eaten by the shark. So, you know, his girlfriend's like, where's so-and-so? I think his name was Oberman, but, you know, he gets, and he dies when his arm gives the 3D effect and everything. And, you know, they don't really think it's a shark because no shark was seen when he died. I think the shark stays pretty well hidden at the front end of this movie, and then, you know, he gets some guys on a tube, and then they finally see the shark. I guess the shark comes up, it chases some water skiers and causes panic in the park, but like they catch this shark, right? But it's a small shark. And they come to find out that the shark that got Oberman was like a bigger shark based on the radius of the bite. And, you know, Kay is trying to explain to them, like, there could be two sharks, and probably its mother. And the John Hammond character, Calvin Bouchard, does not want to hear about the shark having a mother. He has a park to run and needs to stay open. If there's a shark's mother running around in SeaWorld, they're gonna have to close down. So, and I think one thing that I did like with Jaws 3 is like when the big shark comes in the third act, it's like total chaos in the park. I always love the whole underwater tunnel scene where the tour guide has got a bunch of people and the shark cracks the tunnel and everyone's running, and then they got locked into this one area where it's like watertight doors. You know, I always loved that scene. I always loved the girl who did the tour guide thing. Like she calms the people down. Everyone's panicked, and it's a great chaotic scene. Another like Jurassic Park-ish scene.
Daddy, look at the fish!
Holy! Tunnel failure number 6.
Activated. Now.
And then like this big shark is, you know, going through the whole park as well. You know, it's going after Sean and his girlfriend Kelly. They're on the bumper boats, and shark gets into that. Shark's chasing water skiers. It becomes pretty action-packed in that tail end before we get to the final part. Now, meanwhile, they had put the baby shark in captivity. You know, they're trying to capitalize, make money off the shark. Another thing that reminded me of Jurassic Park. You know, like, we're going to make money off this shark. We're going to capitalize on it. And, you know, a whole, you know, I imagine Ian Malcolm stepping into this movie and saying, you better think about what you're doing, you know, what your final outcome might be with messing with these sharks. Anyhow, let's get into the tail end. So, I mean, Jaws 3, I mean, graphics, again, it's rough. 1983, I felt like graphics weren't at their best then, but for the time, I think it was bad for what could have been done at that time. And, like, I feel like the whole shark going through the glass and cracking that, It wasn't a fun scene, but like when I look at as I'm older and I watch it, I'm like, wow, that looks like a toy shark stuck in a toy model. Like when you see the shark going like from the wide lens, the wide angle shot of it, and then the slow motion part of it too, like when they're like, oh, what is that? Like the shark's coming towards that. And there was an homage to this scene in Deep Blue Sea 1999, where a bunch of people are in a similar room. They are down underwater watching a shark come at them, except for in Deep Blue Sea, the shark has this one guy that was supposed to be airlifted because the shark had already took his arm, and he's on a stretcher, and the shark's coming towards the glass. And I thought, wow, ooh, homage to Jaws 3 and Deep Blue Sea there. And same thing, similar. It plays out similar. Shark goes through the glass and water cracks in. Someone dies. But back to Jaws 3, same thing happens. Shark cracks through the glass, and Fitzroyce. I didn't talk too much about Fitzroyce. Him and his pal are trying to take pictures of the shark. They're another one that they want to capitalize on the shark. And Fitzroyce has grenades. There was this whole thing about grenades, and Bouchard was like, no grenades, but he still had a grenade, and the shark gets him. And another very brutal death is Fitzroyce. The shark kind of crunch, and then you see like they show an angle from inside the shark's mouth, and you hear the like he's screaming. It's all muffled because it's underwater and he's in a shark's body. I mean, to me, that would be to die in a shark like that would be pure terrifying. So probably the best death in this movie. And then, now it's like, how are we going to get rid of the shark? Mike Brody, of course, comes, played by Dennis Quaid. He manages to he sees Bouchard in the shark's mouth, and he's able to kind of pull the trigger of the grenade and blow the shark up. And I thought, how does he do that? I mean, I guess it's a timer on the grenade, so he has time to get away from it. But like, I thought, yeah, he shouldn't have survived, but he does. Jaws 3 is fun. I mean, it's a fun 1980s version. Like, if anything that felt like the 80s is Jaws 3. It just, the way the characters were, the way the music was, just the way everything was, total 80s vibe, Jaws. So even though compared to 1 and 2, it's definitely a big step below 2 as far as entire quality. Which brings me to the fourth one, the real stinker in this series. And I'll tell you what, in 1987 when Jaws The Revenge was released, I was old enough to see it. I was old enough to remember even the previews being on. So like, this was, of all the Jawses, this was the only one I could anticipate. I was 10 years old. I just remember it, and I remember thinking, oh, I couldn't wait to see it, and I couldn't wait to see, what happens with Jaws. So this one, Jaws the Revenge. I mean, I'll tell you, it stayed in the top of my ranking because for like the longest time it was like Jaws 2, then Jaws 4, then Jaws 1. But like, what anchored Jaws for me, Jaws the Revenge, was the banana boat scene. I mean, I still love the banana boat scene. I still watch the banana boat scene on YouTube constantly. I always love that scene. I mean, I know it's kind of nonsensical and chaotic, But it's the best scene in Jaws: The Revenge. The shark shows up, and the little girl's on the banana boat, and all the females are at this like little convention for Carla, who's Mike's wife in this one. And the shark comes up, it gets closer and closer, and everyone's panicking on the beach. They see the shark, but the banana boat can't get away from it, the shark, fast enough. And the shark jumps up and just misses Thea, the granddaughter of Ellen, by like one person. The lady behind her gets it by the shark. And you know, I just thought, how did they film this? This was probably, you know, a rough film, because I mean, it's only 12 years after the original Jaws, and you know, they were having technical difficulties with all these sharks in all these movies, but you know, the way the shark was in that scene. Now we'll get into the rest of the movie, but like I felt like that scene, it was really done well, and I just always enjoyed the chaos of that scene. And it is, I mean, Jaws: The Revenge only has 2 deaths. Like, what the heck? Like, I never realized that, because Ellen has like a fake out death. Well, it depends what version you watch, because Mario Van Peebles dies in like the TV edit one, but lives in the movie edit. I can't remember which one. He dies in one and lives in the other. He should have died, because like they already had 2 deaths, so like we don't need to keep him. This is the last movie. You weren't getting a sequel after this. But so maybe there was 3 deaths in Jaws: The Revenge, but needless to say, let's just go with the first death, Sean's death. You know, so like it was kind of like, I didn't care when I was young, but like now that I'm older, it's like, man, Sean survived Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, and to die in the first scene of Jaws 4, I mean, I guess it's this whole thing like Kristen Parker dying in the beginning of Elm Street, Rachel dying at the beginning of Halloween 5. You know, it's like some of your beloved characters, some of them can be Sidney Prescott, some of them can survive through all of them, and Sean should have never died. And you know, his death was okay. You know, he's out on the and the other thing was, it's Christmas time, so like, because you know, how does Jaws come at Christmas? Again, like, does Jaws actually have a Christmas movie? Is Jaws: The Revenge trying to be Die Hard, where it's a Christmas movie, but not really a Christmas movie, but just takes place at Christmas, so people love to call it a Christmas movie? Well, Jaws is the Christmas Jaws. Jaws: The Revenge will be Christmas Jaws, I guess. Because during Sean Brody's death, there is a choir on the dock singing the first Noel, and it's like this like cuts to the first Noel, cuts to his death. I mean, when I was little, I thought it was funny and amusing, and the death itself was scary. And the death itself is kind of scary, but the way it's quick cut, it's rough. And then, you know, then they go through. Jaws takes so long. Jaws: The Revenge takes so long to get to where it needs to get to, because now it starts off in Amity. Sean dies in Amity. Mike's living in the Bahamas. He comes up for the funeral. He's with Ellen. Martin Brody's out of the picture. By the way, Ellen and Martin weren't even mentioned in the third one at all. It was just the kids. Just Sean and Michael were in the third one. Not even a mention of them. I don't think much of a mention of them. But in this one, they kind of mention him because Ellen's back. But, you know, where's Roy Scheider? Roy Scheider was done with Jaws, so he wasn't going to be in this one. So they killed him off with a heart attack off screen. You know, I thought another thing that was rotten about this was, it was the fear of the shark that killed him. Like, couldn't he have just died of a heart attack and that be that? But like, they take forever to get to the climax, and the climax is short. You have the banana boat scene, which is at the way end, and the you know, when they actually go out and hunt down the shark and get him, and that's pretty short as well. I mean, it was very similar, like a very faint echo of the first one, where they go out in this boat, and it's a few people out on the boat trying to hunt down the shark. But it's like, it seemed like in real time it took like an hour or 2 hours maybe. Like, she goes out, she finds a shark finds her, because in this one it's called Jaws: The Revenge, so the shark is like targeting just the family. So the shark is trying to be like Michael Myers, like targeting Laurie Strode and just Laurie Strode's family. And for this, I mean, I get it now why people say like the killers in these movies shouldn't be just targeting one thing. It's more scary when the shark is random. So in the first Jaws and in the second Jaws, even though there's they allude to the fact that the shark in Jaws 2 is coming back for a revenge. It's never really discussed that much other than like one line.
Sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody.
And I mean, it is clearly the shark has revenge. Ellen's obsessed with the shark. She's convinced the shark is after the family, and the way this shark behaves, I mean, not only does it target only the Brodies, but like it literally skips other people. Like Mario Van Peebles could have gotten eaten multiple times in this movie, and the shark has no interest in him until the way end when he doesn't get it. But again, every time the shark got someone that wasn't a Brody, it was always going for a Brody. Like the girl on the banana boat, it just missed. So, I mean, that premise is kind of dumb. The idea of it sounded cool when I was little. Oh, the revenge. The shark's getting revenge, you know. But, like, over time, it's just goofy. And Jaws the Revenge, it's one of those terrible movies that you can love to watch or hate to love. It just... I still love the Jaws franchise. I still watch all of the Jawses, even Jaws the Revenge. Over the years, I did find myself fast-forwarding through a lot of the Revenge. You know, there's a lot of scenes where they're out on a boat chasing coral, and like the shark takes forever to get to the Bahamas, which of course, I mean, it's thousands of miles. It's gonna take a minute. Michael Caine. So, Hoagie. I love Hoagie. I mean, he was, you know, he's no Roy Scheider, you know, and his character was a different thing, you know. You know, Ellen Brody's love interest, the guy who flies the plane. He was really more of a comic relief in this movie. And, you know, he was just fun to watch. I mean, he wasn't given much to do in the movie. I thought maybe he could have been more involved at the end with the death and everything. But he really just flies the plane. He flies the plane and he dates Ellen. And that's it. The movie could have came and went without him, but he just is that comic relief, and I enjoyed watching him. And he was at the time like a name known to, like, besides Lorraine Gary, who's known from the other ones, no one else was too well known. Though Lance Guest, who played Michael, he was in Halloween 2. He played aside Lord Jamie Lee Curtis. I always was like, oh, he got to be in a Halloween and a Jaws, just like the guy who plays Hendrix in Jaws 2. He also played in Halloween 2, I believe. Anyhow, that's it. Jaws the Revenge is at the bottom. I mean, the death is kind of cringy. The whole thing with the shark having that like electrical collar on it, and it roars like a lion. And it took me a while. I was like, what type of sound is this shark making? And I'm like, do sharks even make a sound? And you know, I guess they were trying to create a sound of what a shark would be, what type of noise a shark would make if it was being electrically shocked, because obviously this has never happened to any real shark, so they don't really know what a shark would sound like. But, you know, I guess a lion is close enough. But that's it. Jaws the Revenge is at the bottom you know, of the ranking. I still love all the movies. As you see, I have all of them on VHS. I do have like a Blu-ray set somewhere of them. I tend to watch the Jaws franchise a lot during the summer. Like last year when I was at the beach, I was rewatching all of them. They're always streaming on something. So Jaws is easy to find. So this is the first in a series of Jaws anniversary segments I'm going to do. I probably will be ranking the deaths in Jaws and most memorable moments in Jaws, which there's a lot of memorable moments in Jaws that don't involve shark deaths or deaths of people, but the shark still is a terror, so I'll be getting into that. And yeah, so we're going to be spending June of 2025 talking a little bit about Jaws and its franchise. So if you're liking my horror content, please give a like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, and all that jazz. Thanks again, and stay scared, and definitely of sharks.